I am very excited because today I am talking to Juliet Mey, who is the founder of Isibindi in Cape Town, South Africa. She's a mum, she's a marathon runner, and she's a mammoth leader in the marketing industry. So Jules runs Isibindi, which is a fully integrated B2B growth consultancy business. And today we're going to be talking about customer-centric organizations. What does Isibindi mean?
So Isibindi is the Zulu, or it's actually very commonly used a lot of African languages for courage. My thinking around the word is that in order for an organization to be customer-centric and in order for a business to fundamentally shift their model to be customer-centric, they need courage to do it.
Awesome. So what do you think it is about the organizations that make them scared to take that step forward to making a change, like moving their business into a customer-centric model?
I think a lot of the time it's because it's going to mean two things. One is it's going to mean they actually have to listen to what their customers have to say. And I think a lot of businesses think they know what their customers have to say or think their customers know how they feel about them, but don't actually know. So I think there's an element of fear there in terms of what are we going to actually hear. And, you have to be honest with yourself about the fact that you might be doing some things incorrectly. And I think the other thing is it fundamentally means shifting how they do things in terms of moving from potentially developing products for the sake of it and maybe having to not necessarily do as much product development, but moving maybe more into services or shifting the model to adapt to what the customer needs is going to be potentially different from how they're doing things now. And that means they're going to have to ask themselves some tough questions in order to think that that's why there's an element of fear associated with it.
What is a customer-centric organization? And what does it mean to be a customer-centric organization?
I think, I think there's two parts to that. I think before I mention what customer centricity is, I think to mention the difference between customer experience and customer centricity. Those are two terms that are often used interchangeably, and they are actually fundamentally different. Customer experience is the tactic of interacting with a customer and a specific touch point. So how does the call center handle their clients and what does that experience look like? How do you interact on social media? And those are all experiences that you create. Whereas customer centricity is a business strategy. It's a strategy that comes from the top down, and it's how does the business choose to operate? You then use customer experience as a tactic within that model.
I think the percentage of businesses who actually understand, they know their business as they know it, for sure, but I don't think a lot of businesses actually understand their business in terms of how they want it to be perceived and where they want it to go.
I believe, in my view, that for businesses to be truly customer-centric, they need to understand who they are as a brand, and they need to understand what their identity is. So in order to have an authentic relationship and engagement, they need to understand kind of how are they going to present themselves in that relationship. That's the starting point. Second component is the customer and understanding exactly who the customer is. There's certain practical tools you can do to unpack that. There's obviously elements of research and engagement that you can do. You can do a customer journey mapping exercise where you in-depth unpack all your sort of audience segments. You can do empathy mapping. There's a couple of practical tools that you can do to really unpack those key points in the relationship. In conjunction with that, you unpack your culture, how are your staff, who are ultimately the key kind of touch points, I suppose, in terms of engaging with the audience. So how those three components need to be connected, and they need to speak to each other, and they need to act coherently in order to create those experiences.
A lot of even small businesses won't do something as simple as sending out like a survey monkey. Like you'll often say, how is your product like received, and how does it compare to others based on the feedback you've received from your customers? And so often they just don't know. And it's such an easy thing to be able to at least start by sending out a survey to say, how we're doing, how are we making you feel? How's our product helping your lives? How are you benefiting from what we're doing? That's at least one thing that I think would be so helpful for smaller businesses to do.
on that point, which I agree with you 100%, 80% of businesses interviewed felt that they were delivering a superior experience to customers. But of that of the customers that were asked, only 20% of them felt that they were receiving a superior experience.
Wow.
What that says is that there's a disconnect between how businesses think they're performing and how they're actually performing. And I think that disconnect is fundamental to why customer centricity as a strategy is so important.
The market is so oversaturated with the same products and the same services, but the key difference that you can make is the customer experience that you provide. And I've bought, the same products from several different companies in the past, but I now only go with one company because of the fact that they were responsive. They clearly knew who they were, what their brand was, and I felt very comfortable in interacting with them and was very happy with the experience and the customer support that they provided. So experience, I think, is such a important thing to define how you are servicing and what, not just servicing, but what experience you are giving in that servicing process.
Some businesses can afford to actually charge a premium if the experience is sufficient. People will pay. People will pay for that if they know they're going to get it on time. They're going to have it with friendly service. There's so, and that's what I think. Some people think, oh, customer centricity is this big thing. Sometimes it's actually just really the little things that make the biggest difference.
What are some of the key benefits, like key top line benefits that I can expect if I make the change in my business?
I think the key focus, or the key kind of benefit for me, is focus. So focus of strategy, focus of product development, focus of which initiatives to drive. And a lot of the time, it's very seldom that there's a unique product. And if there is a unique product, it's not long until there's a competitor. So businesses can't necessarily differentiate on product. They often have to differentiate on service, on quality of service, promises, all those kinds of things. So it's just a case of saying, right, I need to focus and just respond to my audience. Obviously, I'm not saying you must just be aware of what they're doing, but just do what you do and do it better than anybody else. That's kind of what needs to happen. I think the other benefits are obviously employees. So if you get buy-in from your employees and you involve them in the process and they're engaged and they're actually getting satisfaction, I think that's going to help with reduced amounts of retention. And the better your staff feel about their day job, the better they're going to service your customers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And also from a brand perspective, your story is consistent and your message is consistent, and it's almost easier to respond because you inherently know how to respond rather than having to force it, which is often what happens when there's a disconnect. Yeah.
How are you helping your customers? What do you offer?
Yeah, so I mean, our belief is that if you do it properly, you'll only need to do it once. So, and just do it properly. I act as an agile extension of management teams, aligning the company to its audience and every part of the business so that it's naturally customer-centered. I'm obviously, independent, but I have a plethora of partners that I work with and that I draw on to deliver the best service. I think I don't want to have a big organization. I want to sort of remain agile and be able to draw in resources that I have from all over the world to deliver the best service to the client for what they need. Let me adapt to the client rather than kind of forcing a whole agency onto someone. So that's kind of really the approach.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.